Hi guys, my name is Tabea Iseli. I'm a game designer and programmer at Blindflug Studios. And yeah, today I'm here to talk about creating entertaining games with a meaningful core. So I know this title sounds a bit like 10 steps to make your serious game more fun. But that's not why I'm here. It's actually more like an insight into the design process of the 2 games we made at our company in the last 2 years. So let me introduce them. First Strike was our debut title, where you slip into the role of a nuclear power trying to win a thermonuclear war. It got released March 2014, so a bit more than a year ago, on premium mobile market. And yeah, it actually did quite well. So that actually enabled us to make another game, which is called Cloud Chasers. Cloud Chasers is this journey of a father and a daughter through the desert and their hope to live in a better place. We almost finished production on this one, and it's going to be released this fall, also on premium mobile market. But to start, I would like to turn the time back a little bit and share the story why we even came up with this, kind of crazy idea to make premium games about serious topics. So it all started at a symposium in Lausanne, where after 3 burgers and 4 beers, our CEO Moritz and one of our game designers, Jeremy, started talking about strategy games. And eventually they came to the question, could we make a strategy game about nuclear war? Because Moritz was into nuclear war topic. So even though they weren't talking about the same thing, because Moritz was just thinking about the political side, and Jeremy was just already thinking of all those crazy game ideas he had for this topic. The idea still stuck, and we actually started working on it, so we kind of just got into that topic. And yeah, here we are in a room full of game developers, and I guess that there are a lot of people here who also think, yeah, why not making a game about nuclear war like we did back then? And to be honest, it was a lot trickier than we thought, because when we started to talk to people about our idea, it turned out that there were more or less like 2 reactions to the topic. So generally speaking, people who are older than 35 years thought that this game was way too offensive. That's not going to work out. Because they were around when the Cold War happened, or at least the end of it. So they have this personal connection to the topic, and they know how it is to live with the even slightly possibility of a nuclear strike, while people who are younger than 30 absolutely don't. I, for example, was just 1 year old in the year of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, so I don't really know how it was. And actually, a lot of people in my age or younger, when they think about nuclear war, they think about this. And I know that it's a bit exaggerated, but the topic really lost a lot of its impact in the last years. And that's when we started to think about the personal picture one has about that topic, and how this personal picture matches reality. Plus, how does media influence our personal picture? So let's make an example. Let's talk about media coverage in the last years about nuclear war. I don't know if you guys actually follow the topic, but I guess just some weeks ago there were a lot of media reports about the nuclear program of Iran. And that's actually very typical because most media reports in the last years were talking about North Korea and Iran, while North Korea actually just has fewer than 10 nuclear warheads, and Iran doesn't even have any proven warheads yet. And the problem with that is that that's just a tiny bit of the total picture. So we are talking about the 10 nuclear warheads of North Korea and the not even proven ones of Iran, while the United States still have over 9,000 and Russia even more with 13,000. And that's what we felt, what we want to talk about. We wanted to tell the players that what is the potential of nuclear war or nuclear weapons today? Who are the nuclear powers and what are their capabilities? So that statement actually influenced the gameplay of First Strike a lot. For example, while you can play as every nuclear power in the game, the actual capability of this nuclear power influences the game's difficulty. So when you are playing as the United States, the game's difficulty is easy because their capability or their arsenal is that big. But on the other hand, when you are playing as North Korea, the game's difficulty is almost impossible. So that actually translated very well into gameplay, that message. But there were also things that forced us to make some trade-offs. Like, for example, the countries you can play as. So this is a map of the former and current nuclear powers on the planet. And as you can see in red and purple, all the current nuclear powers are located on the northern hemisphere. And while that makes perfectly sense in a political way, for the game, this would mean that absolutely nothing would happen on the southern hemisphere. So we decided that we wanted to include some former nuclear powers, such as Brazil and South Africa, but that still left us with tons of no man's land in Southeast Asia and Australia. So we actually more or less had to include Australia, although they were never known to have any nuclear weapons. So are there any Australians in here? I'm very sorry. So we really felt forced to make some very daring decisions, which, in my opinion, had the potential of seriously politically backfire on us. And to be honest, there was some negative feedback. But fortunately, we were very lucky, and there were just one or two negative ones, so it looked more a bit like that. But still, let me share one of the examples. So the Wiener Online, which is this Austrian site, accused us of being out for a bug under the pretext of the serious topic, which as indie developer is kind of a strange statement, but still. And we think that those accusations weren't because of the lack of accuracy in every detail of our portrayal, but because of our decision to comment on the topic on a rather, let's say, subtle way. Because we knew that there are players out there who are like this guy who says, "Oh my God, this is the best game I ever played, blowing up the world, nuking everything. What else could a teenager want? lots of exclamation and question marks. And we totally didn't want to drive those players away. Not because we are just looking for money, but because we think it's even possible to reach those players. But definitely not by rubbing the topic into their faces. So what did we do? One thing we actually did was the graphical transformation of the planet. So when you start a game, we wanted the planet to be as pretty as possible. And while you are playing it, it more and more turns into this dark, destroyed wasteland. And one other thing that actually had the biggest impact was the twist we added to the game. So there's this achievement called Achieve World Peace, and that really made our players think, even our overly enthusiastic teenager, because they came up with so many ideas how to reach this achievement, from total world domination to shooting down every missile that gets launched. They tried everything, and there were so many discussions on our social media channels. So that actually made a lot of buzz, and we're happy with that. Although I have to say that until now, only 0.5% of all the players actually were able to figure out how to do it. And I don't want to spoil it here, but let's just close the topic of First Strike with a quote from a movie which was very inspirational for us, which was War Games. And the quote says, "What a strange game. The only winning move is not to play." So after 2 content updates and roughly 9 months after the release of First Strike, we decided that we want to make a second game. So the day came when Moritz came into the office and he was like, "Guys, we're going to make a game about immigration." And I was just there like, oh God, please not immigration. Because when you are talking about nuclear war, you can debate if keeping nuclear weapons is a good or a bad thing, but in the end, almost everybody agrees that we should avoid nuclear war at all costs. But with immigration, it's just a whole different case, because it is a very old topic. It is very regional because issues and systems differ from place to place. And last but not least, none of us actually had any immigration background or was part of any other minority. So I was really skeptical if we could turn this controversial, very delicate topic into a fun game for a broad audience. But actually I was a bit relieved when we took our first step, which was taking the whole thing and put it into a fictional setting. That actually gave us a lot of security, because we could talk about the topic of immigration without accusing any government or being disrespectful about the fates of immigrants. And not only that, but also it actually allowed us to not only focus on one specific region, like, for example, Europe and Africa, but we could combine immigration issues from around the globe and thereby reach a much broader audience. So with this setting, we started our research. And what once again really astonished us was the focus of the material we found about it. So we found that a lot of of media reports are just focusing on the destination. Like in Europe, for example, that would be Melilla, which is this Spanish city on the African mainland, or Lampedusa, this Italian island relatively close to the African coast. There are so many media reports on how many people sunk and drowned on their way to Lampedusa, or how many people, how many immigrants or refugees are trying to get into Melilla. And what we think, what we are neglecting with that is the fact that this is just the end of the journey. Those people, or those refugees and immigrants, were traveling sometimes over a whole or a half of the continent through war zones. And very interestingly, also, most of the immigration routes on a global scale are leading through the desert. So that's what we wanted to talk about. We thought that this very long journey through the desert that happens before we actually hear of those immigrants for the first time would be a very good opportunity to talk about the immigration from a different angle. So we started to search for other things that fascinated us or moved us, and tried to fill our fictional world with them. And in the end, there were like those 3 major topics we really wanted to talk about in the game. Number 1 was Melilla, this Spanish city on the northern coast of the African mainland, where daily hundreds of refugees and migrants are trying to climb over this massive fence to reach the European Union, while the officials are doing absolutely everything to try to keep them out. Number 2 is one of the facts while a lot of Mexicans are trying to get out of their country and into the United States, subsidized high-tech agrarian economy in the industrialized states, which actually makes it more or less impossible to compete with when you are a farmer in one of those so-called developing countries. And number 3, the constantly rising number of migrants, and above all, of course, the number of deaths. So those were the topics we wanted to talk about, but how does this look in the game? So I was just talking about the numbers and that they are very important to us. But for the game, what we actually wanted to do was to get rid of them. Because when you are talking about numbers, about how many people are trying to immigrate or how many people died, you sometimes just are losing the sense, or you are forgetting that those people are actual people, that they are a person with a story, with a family, and with a life. So we didn't want it to just show numbers and how many thousands are going which way. We wanted to tell the story of a family, of a father and a daughter. And then our game, that are Francisco, a corn farmer, and his daughter Amelia. And they are living in this world where the ground is this deserty, steampunky place, and the rich people are living in those big floating artificial cities in the sky. Water gets transported by industrialized cloud harvesters to those floating cities, which actually forces Francisco to leave his farm behind, take Amelia to this dangerous journey through the desert, and trying to reach the spire. And the Spire is this big, huge fortified city, which actually is the only gateway to the floating cities above. And Francisco tries, or he hopes that they might make it there, to get in there and to start a new life in the floating cities. So that's the backstory of Cloud Chasers. And the one topic I was leaving out so far were the deaths. And like I said, we wanted to talk about them, but we didn't wanted the game to get too morbid or too depressing. And that's why we went with a very classical approach to talk about this topic, with roguelike gameplay. So the gameplay of Cloud Chasers looks more or less like that. You are traveling through the desert. You are trying to manage your health and water resources. You might encounter a lot of those randomized events that may be very rewarding, but also extremely dangerous. And probably you're going to die again and again and again until you finally will be able to reach the Spire for once. So that's how we dealt with that topic. And since Cloud Chasers is not yet out, I can't tell you how this concept worked out for us, but we were really pleasantly surprised how well the topic resonated, or how well the game resonated with the people so far. It seems like the topic of immigration moves a lot of people, not only because they have, for example, an immigration background on their own, but maybe their grandparents have or their friends have. And also, one thing that really turned out to be so much more invaluable than we thought was the fact that we chose water for our dilemma and our main resource in the game. So I know it's kind of very typical that we are Swiss and we live in the so-called water fortress of the world. And we were aware that the lack of water is getting more important day by day, but we really underestimated how important the topic already is, but for a lot of our target audience, like, for example, people from Australia or in California. And yeah, this really made us happy that people could relate to the topic we wanted to talk about. And we are looking forward to the release of the game. And I hope that I'm able to tell you how it worked out the next time. So to round it up, I think games are a very good way to talk about the topic in a very personal way, and they are also great to show a topic from a different angle. I also think that serious topics are an inspiration for games. If you're not just trying to depict everything as accurate as possible, but if you're taking it more like an inspiration for your game mechanics and story. And we really think that gameplay shouldn't suffer from being too correct, because we think that great gameplay actually can be the key to reach players who otherwise wouldn't think about the message you're trying to tell. So yeah, that's it. I hope we still have some time for questions, because I would really look forward to answer them. Cool.
Yes, questions?
Hi, Tabea. Thank you for the interesting talk. I would be interested if you can elaborate a little bit on the fact that dealing with a very serious issue means that, you know, paraphrasing it into a game, if you can talk a bit about humor, or what kind of tools you used within your game to make it a bit more approachable for players. You know, how about the tone? I just saw an image very briefly, and it appeared to me that the characters that you showed were quite lighthearted, and there was still some hope, and also the title of the second game seemed quite encouraging to me. But I was wondering about, you know, how did you balance out a serious topic with tone, or did you really wanted to have the utmost impact and really went for it?
Well, it depends about what you're talking about. So it was very different between First Strike and Cloud Chasers, but you were mentioning Cloud Chasers mostly, right?
Yes.
So we are, as you know, we're not the first ones who are making a game about the topic. There is Papers, Please, and also Card Life, for example, that talks about that topic. And in my opinions, those games are very straightforward to the point about the topic, and they're, for me, quite depressing. So we didn't want it to be the topic too depressing, because we think that we're trying to make a game that is approachable for a larger audience than just people who are into indie games. So that might also include children, who, not like small children, but a bit younger. And we wanted the game to be fun to play, but that the message is more like in the background. So we wanted the player to play the game and have fun, and then maybe when they put their smartphone away, speaking of which, when they're putting their smartphones away, that they would start to think about the topic then, but not like that they have to suffer as much as possible in sake of the message in the game.
Okay, I guess I have to wait for the game to come out to get a look at it. Thank you.
Hi. How do you measure, or do you measure, like the impact that your game has had, and if so, how do you measure that?
Well, it's really hard to measure the impact of a game with the players, right? So if you're talking about the impact the message has, of course we had a lot of analytic tools in the game, like what country do they choose, or what rockets do they build, and how do they attack and stuff like that. And we also had, we're counting how many peoples actually came to the world peace end of our game. But that doesn't produce any reliable source of where we could measure how the impact was of the game in the message way. We kind of measure it more on the feedback we're getting from players when you're talking face to face, or from media. And there was so much feedback from media that they really loved our special ending, or the topic we are talking about. So it's hard to measure it, but that's how we are trying to measure it.
Hi, Tabea. Benedict O'Donnell from Hiox Communications. Does Blindflug get any funding from government agencies or NGOs, or is all your money coming from sales of the app?
That's actually quite hard to say. We get a little bit of funding from the government, for example, being able to actually travel to conferences like that. But the production of the games is entirely self-funded by the sales of our games. And some work contracts we have. a little bit. Yeah.
So, hi, great talk. How do you strike a balance between the seriousness of your message and bringing the game to a wide enough audience that they will get the message you're trying to send?
Yeah, that's really hard because, like I said, sometimes you're really on the edge between the serious topic and being accused of taking it too lightly. So, in the end, it all comes back to our intuition. So we have Moritz, who is this very political guy who knows everything about, or very much about history and politics and stuff like that. Then we have Jeremy, who is this game expert who knows every game that got released since the 80s. And then there's me, like, okay, I'm more inspired by art and stuff like that. And that's actually a great mixture to, like, figuring out where the right point could be to talk about the topic. Plus, of course, the feedback that we are getting. So we are trying to go to as many conferences as possible where we can talk to people from really around the world about our topic.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Tabea.
Thank you.